it's Amanda. It is 9:30 and tonight I'm gonna do just a little mini topic on something that I think is relatively interesting, which is that for me, I've kind of been regressing in a sense, and I've been working to get into adulthood. I've been working to be a better leader, a better person, and part of that, or part of what I thought that would be, is that I left social media after I left mental health advocacy, and I've never, posted that much. I've never really interacted that much. I've just been pretty silent on Twitter, pretty silent on Instagram, and I've been starting to get back into it, and I just put my phone down because I was looking at people who would give me lash extensions near me, and then I was like, do I want Botox? And I was scrolling through the Instagram of this prospective person that I wanted to go to for lash extension treatments, and she was talking about how she started getting Botox, preventative Botox, at 25 years old. And I was like, oh my god, I'm 22. Is it my time? And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I would like to kind of take a second to discuss the implications of technology on our mental health, and furthermore, the implications on what happens if that technology bleeds into our everyday physical world, and is it bad if we do set a boundary between the digital screens and the physical worlds in which we divide. And so what I mean by that is I'm specifically talking about the adoption of consumer-facing augmented reality devices. So the one that I'm thinking of right now is a little bit of Humane's little AI pin, not necessarily to the same extent. I'm thinking of Meta's AR glasses. I'm thinking more so of just the direct integration in between social media companies and brick and mortar retailers that I discussed a little bit in my beauty video. And I'm just talking overall, I guess, less as a developer right now and more as a consumer of technology, on what would it even be like to live in a world where your physical surroundings are just integrated with technology that knows your pain points. And so, something interesting that I worked on is when I was 17, I worked for this really eccentric guy who did something, or who ran a company, and I'm not gonna say what it is, but it's not. Okay, I'm not gonna finish the sentence. I don't wanna die. Long story short, I worked for this guy, and he had a lot of money, and he came to me and he was like, I want you to make me a dating app. I want you to build me something dating app, like AR, like hodgepodge. And so the kind of product and the vision that I came up for behind it was in specific areas you would be able to turn on your camera, and you would be able to kind of go over and scan your phone at somebody, and it would kind of tell you guys how you matched up, if you matched up, what their social media profiles were, so on and so forth. And so it was a hybrid Bluetooth AR indoor mapping thing combined with a social media element to it, that was meant to be used in social settings and in clubs. And one of the monetization strategies that I came up with for it at the time, at 17, not necessarily understanding the implications of this, was AR advertisements and other stuff like that. And so the idea was if I pointed my phone at somebody and I was like, you are the cutest person ever, so on and so forth, an AR ad for Durex condoms would pop up, or something like that, right? And so at the time, the business crashed because right as we were going into development, COVID hit, and there's no social AR networking app in COVID, right? And so, and now that I'm reflecting on it and I'm kind of like thinking about it, and I think we're at a interesting and critical point in technology that I feel will be, I don't know, just really interesting to keep an eye on. I know that was a little bit redundant, but what I mean by that is I think we're reaching a point where smartphones and the physical hardware at which we see the world through, or that we interact digitally with, is um I don't know. I just feel like it's stagnant. I don't really feel like there's a lot happening. I killed my MacBook Pro over the summer in Oakland with water, and then I got a brand new MacBook Air, and I actually hate my new MacBook Air worse than I hate my or I don't like my MacBook Air, and I miss my 2020 MacBook Pro. And like I was talking to Valkyrie the other day, and I was like, yeah, like, you know, and she was asking me like, what even is like new on the iPhone 15? And I was like, there's an action button, and when you press the button, it does an action. And I was also thinking of Meta's AR glasses, and I'm just like thinking of all of these like different hardware things, and ultimately, I think a lot of them, I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot of failure in the consumer hardware space right now. I think voice assistants have somewhat of a use, but I feel like they really failed to be the destabilizing thing that everybody thought they would be. Like I have a HomePod, and my friends like occasionally have Alexas, but it's not like every day I walk in and I'm like, Alexa, do XYZ for me. Like I use Siri as uh as a channel of interaction, but it's not the only device from which interaction happens. And I feel like we're kind of like entering into this kind of age where it's not probably going to be just enough for one device to take over and to kind of like rewrite how we deal with interactions, because all of our devices are paired and they work in groupings, right? Like your phone syncs up to your laptop, and your laptop syncs up to your TV, and like, you know, you have one account and it goes in and you like open it up and there's like all of these different things. And so I feel like whatever consumer hardware comes out has to be an entire suite, and it has to be an entire like monolith, because all of these other consumer hardware companies are, and it's very hard to compete on that, and it's very capital intensive and all of these other things. And I'm just like, I just think more and more the like consumer argument is that we should either integrate it with our physical world or get more into the digital world. And I don't necessarily know that I like either of those. I don't necessarily feel like, just as a general, completely outside of the tech industry consumer, that I would pick up a Meta Quest, like even if it was $200. Like I feel like just the like general amount of pizzazz that is needed from these products is just like lacking for me, right? Like I feel like they're all about inventing new paradigms and not necessarily about bringing all of these different paradigms into one, right? Because if you think about it, the iPhone wasn't like, wow, because it was like, oh, it's a phone. It was like, oh, it's a phone and it's a BlackBerry and it's XYZ, and it replaces all of your devices and all of these different things with one thing. And I feel like the main consumer hardware issue that we have right now is that we're replacing paths to interaction, and we're imagining that that's going to automatically bundle and shrink all of these other things, right? So like with Humane, the idea is that you don't need your phone. You just have like a little pin, and then you do like bing 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 bing. And so maybe it's your voice assistant and your phone. I don't know. I'm not, no offense. I like the startup and I think they're incredibly amazing, but I just don't think that like that's something that I'm like, ooh, like I would want to have that, you know? And so I think like primarily the consumer facing hardware issue is that it's no longer about bundling, and it's no longer about building all of these monoliths. And I don't even know if that's possible in today's venture capital environment, and with how we're just like, and this is a side tangent, but I think we as Silicon Valley have just gone so off the rails in terms of like building scalable companies and in terms of building things that last, because honestly the most profitable companies are the ones with lots of capital investment that spend many years growing and reiterating and taking their time. And I think the venture capital model um relies on just this very fast like ballooning of a company, which I feel like is terrible for the long-term survival and longevity of a company. And so I'm just like, I'm interested to see what even comes into the consumer hardware space, because I feel like nothing is really satisfying the pre-requirements for anything that consumers would be particularly interested in, and I don't even feel like it is the right environment for a new form of consumer hardware, because usually they're very expensive, and right now like I don't even want to buy like a new phone and I really need one, or like I don't even want to like do anything because finances are so like scarce, and that's for everybody around me, like it's not just me. And so I'm just like ugh, I just don't feel like the consumer hardware industry is giving me anything that I find to be particularly enjoyable, or particularly just so jaw dropping that I'm like, I must have this, you know? And so I also think on that, like, other side is that we should be very critical of these different devices that are coming out. We should be very critical about how businesses who have the capital requirements to be able to make these devices are integrating them into their ecosystem, right? Like, I know Amazon did their Alexa, and then they rolled out like a caregiver thing like through Alexa, and then they went through with their acquisition of One Medical, and so now it's kind of like Amazon is not only going for e-commerce, but they're also going for devices, and they're going for your medical care, and they're really trying to make it like they're trying to Amazon the entire world. And I feel like we should be definitely very critical of that. I do not trust Jeff Bezos, right? And so I think my underlying point is that a lot of these companies who will have the capital needed to be building these new hardware ideas are going to have a lot of not necessarily bad, but just unintended like systems or paths that they want to push us into. And for me, my biggest fear is like meta and the metaverse. And so a little bit of like my background, or not even about my background, but like to what I mentioned is like I'm trying to get back on social media. I'm trying to be rodeoing in the wings now. And I honestly already feel my eating disorder stuff coming back. And I already feel very self-conscious and even making YouTube videos. And I told myself I wouldn't do this. And I was like, the whole point of me being online is to figure out how to be a better storyteller and to figure out how to get over my social anxiety. And now I'm like looking at videos of myself and I'm like, oh my god, my face is so square. Do I have a big forehead? I feel like I have a big forehead. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. This is not what this was supposed to be. This is supposed to be an intellectual undertaking. And now I'm sitting here like, should I get preventative Botox for my like 1,000 Instagram followers? It's like, Amanda, like, oh my gosh. So I think like my biggest fear is like a lot of these companies need to know everything about you to be able to get the capital requirements to build these new devices and to build these new technological paradigms. And a lot of that relies on knowing your pain points and knowing what you want to like knowing what you want to see. And I feel like my particular fear is that like any interesting consumer hardware that's going to have the network effect to get a bunch of people on it is going to be primarily dominated by companies who have information about me that I don't want them to have. Like, I'm pretty sure Amazon could figure out that, you know, I do some weird shit and that I have a lot of health issues, and I don't want to like put on my Amazon Alexa goggles and Amazon Alexa is like, oh my gosh, I see that you're looking particularly tired and stressed about the world today. Do you want me to order you like some more weed? And I feel like it's really important to note that for a lot of these companies, the they don't take on the casualty of responsibility for enablement, and they just enable, right? And their whole idea is that if you get enabled by stuff online, like turn off your phone. Like if you go on Instagram and you have an eating disorder, like that's your fault because of who you see on Instagram and like all of these other things. But I think the reality is like it is an ecosystem of profit and of marketing and of instilling confidence issues and pain point issues in you so that they can market it to you. And it actually makes me deeply sad because I thought that Gen Z, which is my generation out of all of them, would be the ones who would understand through this thinly veiled corporate veneer that this stuff is just like this stuff is just sucking your money away. And I always heard that growing up. And then I was on the Glossier site, and I had this undying brand loyalty to Glossier. I was like, Glossier is like my ride or die. I've been using them for years. And I was on the site, and I was like, I feel like I need to buy this to be an adult, to be beautiful, to be the kind of woman that I wish I could be as a leader. And then I just kind of stopped. And I was like, what the fuck is an $18 brow, like, brow, like, mascara gonna get me? It's just taking my money. And I was like, and I started looking at advertisements and I started looking at the things that I wanted. And I was like, am I buying this to get the actual product, or am I buying this to get the emotion that I think this product will give me that it probably will not? And if so, what are better ways that I could foster that emotion in other areas? And I think my fear is like, as someone who has actually built a product like this, and as someone who's looking at these consumer facing startups, as someone who's looking at this generation who is just as susceptible, probably even more susceptible than previous generations, to all of this like beauty, self-consciousness stuff, like I'm really concerned. I'm always really concerned, but I feel like I'm especially just cynical, and I'm especially just like increasingly fraught about updating or adopting new technologies, because I feel like it's not just like getting a new like headset. It's like another channel and another way for all of these constant societal pressures to bleed into my world. And I think what I love about this is you can see I don't know if you can see because it's cracked. I throw my phone all of the time. If I am upset, I'm just like, I'm turning it off and I'm chucking it. I'm not gonna do that with a $2,000 headset. I'm not gonna do that with an Amazon Alexa. And I feel like we need to implement boundaries, or else these companies will write them for us. And so I don't necessarily know what the point of that whole discussion was. I guess I'm just greatly anxious, and I don't trust tech companies to do what's right. And I'm sick of feeling like I'm a piece of shit and the way that I look sucks because Instagram wants to make some money. Like, that's what's up. And same for TikTok, right? It's like you go on TikTok shop and like the quality of stuff is horrible, and it's all like basically clickbait products, and then you're like, oh my gosh, look at this brand, I think it's really well made and it's really quality, and you're like, oh, this is beautiful, like I love this Selkie puff dress, and then you're like, oh my god, I've fallen for it. I am in the jaws of capitalism and I am being tied to it by this brick and there is no escape. So okay, I feel like that was a little bit of a Freudian slip there, but I think, long story short, I just don't know. I'm just really interested to see the consumer tech space, and I think I just need to get offline, and I feel like I need to just stop looking at my face. Honestly, I wish I was a VTuber, even though I think VTubing in some aspects can be just the slightest bit cringe. And not necessarily in terms of like it's cringe to hide yourself behind a mask, but I think it's cringe to take animated versions of yourself that are societably acceptable and beautiful. Like the big titty anime girl VTubers drive me nuts. I'm sorry. I'm just like, can there just be, can we just have like some like humans that look real? Like, can we just get like some realistically looking people instead of just like constant reminders of what society wants us to look like? So, I don't know. The pressure is real. I'm interested to see the consumer hardware space. I'm interested to see how they monetize it. I'm interested to see if it actually does come from an upstart company like Humane or I think like there's another company called Tab. Like I'm just interested to see you know where these things are going, but I'm also just like, are these new products gonna come at the cost of my peace and of my sanity? Because it definitely feels like they are. And I don't know if I want to have a technological world like that. Like maybe the answer is going back and not necessarily going forward. But what do I know? I am just a bitch with QuickTime screen recording on the internet. So that is all. I hope you enjoyed my little mini ramble. Thank you for just letting me get it out because I was like, why am I about to have an anxiety attack watching this like 30-year-old get Botox? And then I was like, why am I also thinking about Humane's AI pin and all of these different unrelated topics? So thank you for listening to my network of ramble, and I'm probably just gonna hang out and enjoy my night, and I hope you do the same, and I hope you've had a beautiful Thanksgiving that's been very fulfilling and very comforting. And I think I'm gonna go become Amish now. So it was really nice. I will see you guys at my Roman Spraga. Goodbye.